Hey everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to crochet Neptune the Narwhal. Full of mystic charm and playful energy, this sea creature fills the ocean with wonder and joy. Neptune can be made in sport, DK, or plush weight yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today I'll be crocheting with worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to snag the matching greeting card to make an adorable and one-of-a-kind gift that your friends and family will love. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we're getting started on the body and head, and we're going to be using this lilac colored yarn, and the first thing that we need to do is get a magic ring formed. So let's review how to tie a magic ring and how to make our first few single crochet stitches inside. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those 2 fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand. And I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the 2 tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around. And then once we've got it around the top digit of those 2 fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our 2 fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these 2 wraps here. This is that one I just made going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit. And then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb. And then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have 2 wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand. And we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have 2 wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my 2 hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the 2 of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. We're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position. So kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook. So I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready to start in on round 1. So round 1, we need to put 8 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. So remember, we're going to be working in both the ring and around the tail that we use to tie the ring. So we're going to start by taking our crochet hook and going in through that ring and underneath the tail. And then we're going to yarn under, so we're going to put the yarn under our crochet hook and use the hook to draw that yarn up through the ring and onto our crochet hook in a nice tall loop. Then we're going to yarn over, so we're going to put the yarn over our crochet hook and then use the hook to pull that yarn through those 2 loops left on our crochet hook. And that makes our first single crochet stitch. We need to mark this stitch as well, so I'm going to take my stitch marker and slip it underneath the 2 little legs of the V on the top of our stitch here, and then lock my marker in place. And we need to make 7 more of these single crochet stitches to finish round 1, which will give us 8 stitches total. So we'll take our crochet hook, go through that ring again and under the tail, yarn under, and draw a nice tall loop. Then we'll yarn over and draw through both to make our second single crochet stitch. We're going to continue adding stitches in that same way until we have 8 Alright, so I have all 8 of my single crochet stitches, and you can double check by turning your work on the side and starting with the one that we've marked, counting these V shapes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we don't count this loop here on our hook as a stitch. So I have all 8 of my single crochet stitches. I'm going to take that tail from our magic ring and do the magic part by pulling it tightly. I'll close off that first round, and that puts the last stitch right by the stitch we have marked and sets us up for round 2. So in round 2, we're going to put 1 increase in each of the 8 stitches that we made in round 1. And our first stitch is marked for us. So we're going to take that stitch marker out. And to make our increase, we're going to put 2 single crochet stitches inside of each stitch from round 1. So we're going to go through that first stitch that we just unmarked by pushing our hook from front to back underneath both sides of the stitch. As you can see, it looks like I have 2 loops here on my hook. Then I'm going to yarn under and draw my crochet hook through the fabric of that stitch that I just pushed through and draw a nice tall loop up. And then yarn over and draw through the 2 loops left on my hook. I also need to mark this single crochet stitch because it's the first stitch of my round. And then to finish my increase, I need to make a second single crochet stitch in the same stitch from the previous round. So I'm going to go back through that same stitch, yarn under and draw up a loop, then yarn over and draw through both. And you can see I have 2 of these little V's coming out of the same hole, which is the stitch from round 1. So I'm going to continue increasing, adding 1 single crochet increase to each of the 7 remaining stitches. So I'll go to my next stitch. I can kind of turn my work to see, here's that next V shape. So there's my second increase. I'm just going to continue adding 2 single crochet stitches to each of the 8 stitches from round 1. And that's going to give us 16 stitches at the end of round 2. Alright, so that's the end of round 2 for me. Before I move on to round 3, I'm going to give my magic ring tail one final tight tug and then flip my work over and trim this tail. So I'm going to discard what I trimmed. And you can see that will make the magic ring tail stay out of our way as we continue working around. Alright, so with that tail trimmed, we're ready for round 3. So round 3, we have some parentheses that have instructions inside of them. So let's do everything inside of those parentheses first, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, and then remark that as it's the first stitch of the round. And then the next part of our parentheses is telling us to increase, so in the next stitch we will make 1 increase. And then that's everything inside of those parentheses. Right outside you can see we have a multiplication sign and the number 8. That's telling us we need to repeat what we just did. 1 single crochet stitch, increase, 8 times total. So we're going to continue working that pattern. 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, 8 times total, which is going to give us 24 stitches and take us all the way around round 3. So we've already done it once. Let's continue repeating that pattern. 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round, 1 increase. That's our second repetition. We're going to just keep repeating that pattern. 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, until we repeated it 8 times total. Alright, so there's that last increase, and that ends round 3. So round 4, we've got another parentheses pattern. So this time we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches. So 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then remark that stitch. 1 single crochet stitch in the next stitch of the round. So that's that 1, 2 single crochet stitches, and then an increase. So that's everything inside of those parentheses one time. Just like the last round, we need to repeat that pattern 8 times total. So we're going to continue repeating that. 1 single crochet stitch, 2 single crochet stitches, 1 increase. There's my second repetition. I'm just going to keep repeating that, and that'll take me all the way to my stitch marker and give me 32 stitches at the end of round 4. Alright, that's me done with round 4. Round 5, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So 1 single crochet stitch, mark that stitch, and then just keep adding 1 single crochet stitch to each of the stitches that we made in round 4. Alright, that's round 5 done. I'm ready for round 6. I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of my round. So there are those 3 single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to place 1 increase. And repeat that pattern of 3 single crochet stitches followed by 1 increase 7 more times for a total of 8 repetitions. Alright, that's the round 6 done for me. I'm ready for round 7, where I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 9 stitches of the round. Alright, there are those 9 single crochet stitches, and then 1 increase. And then we're going to repeat that pattern 3 more times, so a total of 4 repetitions of 9 single crochet stitches followed by 1 increase. Alright, that is round 7 done for me. So rounds 8 through 12, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around for each of those rounds. So as you go, make sure you mark the first round. So here I am starting round 8. And don't forget to move your stitch marker up as you start a new round. So I will see you back here whenever I have made the last single crochet stitch in round 12, and we're ready to move on together to round 13. Alright, so I just finished the last single crochet stitch here in round 12, and I'm ready to move on to round 13. So round 13, we're going to begin by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 12 stitches of our round. And then we've got a parentheses pattern to repeat, but the first part of it is a decrease. So let's review how to do one of those. To make a decrease, we're going to go through the next single crochet stitch of our round, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then we'll do the same thing in the stitch right after. Go through, yarn under, and draw up a loop. Then to finish this decrease, we're going to yarn over and draw through all 3 of the loops left on our crochet hook. And you can see that takes 2 stitches from the previous round and combines them into 1 stitch, so we're decreasing the amount of stitches that we have. Alright, so with that decrease done, we're ready to continue that parentheses pattern. So we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of our round. And then we're going to repeat that parentheses pattern of 1 decrease, 3 single crochet stitches 3 more times for a total of 4. So 1 decrease, and then 3 single crochet stitches, Alright, so there's my last repetition of that parentheses pattern. Then we're going to end this round by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 12 stitches, which should take us to our stitch marker. Alright, that's round 13 done for me. Round 14, we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of our round. Then we'll follow that with 1 decrease. Then we're going to repeat that pattern a second time. So 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches, followed by a decrease. Alright, and then we've got another parentheses pattern to repeat. This time we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round, followed by 1 decrease. And we're going to repeat that 5 times total, so another 4 repetitions. So 2 single crochet stitches, decrease. That's my second repetition. Alright, there's that last repetition of that second parentheses pattern. And then we've got 1 more parentheses pattern to repeat, which is to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round, and then decrease. And we'll repeat that a second time. So 3 single crochet stitches, followed by 1 decrease. Alright, that's round 14 done. Next, we need to place the safety eyes. So I'm going to take this loop on my hook and draw it up long and take my hook out. Alright, next, before we place the eyes, if Neptune the Narwhal is going to be for a young child or for a pet, you may want to embroider the eyes on instead. But if not, we can go ahead and get our safety eyes ready. I've got mine here. And they're going to be placed in between rounds 11 and 12. So the last round we crocheted was round 14. So I'm going to count up from this last round until I reach round 12. So 14, 13, 12. And then I'm going to place this first safety eye in between round 12 and round 11. Alright, so now that I have that first safety eye placed, the second safety eye is going to go on the other side of the head in between that same round. So I'm going to kind of rotate along. And fortunately, we can see where the other eye is placed based on where the stem is poked through. So I'm going to push the eye into that space between, and then double check that I'm okay with the placement of both eyes. So once I have them placed where I'd like, I can take the little plastic backs that come with them and snap them on. And that is the safety eyes attached. So we're ready to go ahead and take our crochet hook, put it back through that loop, and draw it down. And then for rounds 15 and 16, we're going to just be putting one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So I will catch you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 16, and we are ready to move on in our pattern. Alright, so I just finished the last single crochet stitch here in round 16, and I'm ready for round 17, where we've got 3 sets of parentheses patterns to follow. Starting with the first, we need to put one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round, and then one decrease. I will repeat that a second time. Then one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round, followed by one decrease. And we'll repeat that a second time. And then one single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round, followed by a decrease. We'll repeat that a second time. And then one single crochet stitch in the remaining 3 stitches of the round. Alright, that's round 17, so rounds 18 and 19, just one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. I'll catch you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch in round 19, and we're ready to move on together. Alright, I just finished round 19, and I'm ready to move on to round 20, where we got some more parentheses patterns to repeat, starting with one single crochet stitch in the first 2 stitches of the round, followed by one decrease. And we're going to repeat that a second time. Then one single crochet stitch in the next stitch, followed by one decrease. And we'll repeat that 2 more times. And then one single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches, followed by one decrease, and repeat that 1 more time. Alright, that's round 20 done. Before I move on to rounds 21 and 2, I'm going to add some stuffing to the inside of the body here. So I'm going to pull my hook out like I did with my safety eyes. Alright, so I've added some stuffing to the inside of the body, and I'm ready to continue around with rounds 21 and 22, where again we're going to just put one single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So I'll catch you back here whenever I have finished the last single crochet stitch of round 22, and we're ready to move on together to round 23. Alright, so I just wrapped up round 22 and I'm ready for round 23, and our first 2 stitches of this round are going to be decreases. So there's my first decrease, and there's my second, and then one single crochet stitch in the next 10 stitches of the round, There's those 10 single crochet stitches and then 2 more decreases. Right, there are those 2 decreases. And then for rounds 24 and 25, I'm just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So I'll catch you back here at the end of round 25 when we're ready to move on to round 26 together. Alright, so I just finished round 25, and before I move on to round 26, I'm going to add a little more stuffing to the inside of the body here. So I'm going to draw that last loop on my hook long, take my crochet hook out, and then just push some stuffing to the inside of the body. Alright, so I've got some stuffing added. I'll go ahead and put my crochet hook back inside that loop and draw it down. And for round 26, we're going to begin with another 2 decreases. And then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 6 stitches of the round. And then we'll end with 2 more decreases. Alright, and that's round 26 done. We're ready for round 27, which is the last round of the body here, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 10 stitches of this round. Alright, so there's my last single crochet stitch. I'm ready to fasten off. So I'll take my stitch marker out. And then we're going to make a slip stitch in the stitch that stitch marker was just in to begin fastening off. So to make a slip stitch, we'll take our crochet hook, go through that next stitch. We're going to yarn over and draw through that stitch. And the loop that we just created, we're going to pull it through the only other loop on our hook to slip stitch. Then we also need to trim a long tail. We're going to use that tail to sew this last round closed. So reserve yourself 6 to 10 inches of yarn and then trim. And then we're going to take that slip stitch that's on our crochet hook and pull until that tail we've cut passes through the slip stitch. And then pull on the tail that we cut to tighten that slip stitch down. Then before we sew this last round closed, let's add just a little bit more stuffing to the inside of the back part of the body. Alright, so there's a little more stuffing inside the body, and I'm ready to sew this last round closed. So to do that, I'm going to take the tail that I've cut, and I'm going to thread it through the eye of my yarn needle. And then I'm going to take that tail and I'm going to sew it through each of the front loops from those 10 single crochet stitches left in that last round. So when we've been crocheting, we've been passing through both the front and the back loop. I'm going to use my crochet hook so you can see both of those. So the front loop is the one closest to the surface or front of our work, and the back loop is following that same naming pattern, closest to the back or inside of our work. So when we sew around, we're going to be picking up just the front loop. So it's going to sort of feel like we're taking our needle and passing it up and in between the front and the back loop, just snagging the front loop with our tail. And we're going to just continue working our way around here, sewing through all 10 of those front loops until we get all the way around. Alright, so I've sewn through all 10 of those loops. So I'm going to hold my work and pull that tail, and it's going to cinch that last round closed. Then to make sure that last round stays securely closed, we'll tie a knot. So to do that, we're going to take our tail and we're going to make a loop on the surface of our work. So sort of just fold the tail around on itself, making this sort of O shape. Then I'm going to take my yarn needle and I'm going to sew through a little of the fabric right where that loop begins. You can see I'm passing through some of those stitches. And then up and through this loop. And I'm going to keep pulling that tail, which is going to make the loop wrap around itself and tie a knot. And I call this a surface knot. And then I'm going to weave the surface knot and the tail in by sewing it into the body. I like to go through the center of that round we've just cinched. I'll sew it down into the body and then along the inside of my work and out through a random stitch here on the body itself. Then I'm going to pull that tail, which will send the knot to the inside and also weaves the tail inside of my work as well. Then I can unthread my yarn from my yarn needle, and using my scissors and pulling that tail tightly, I'll trim close to the surface of the work. You can discard any tail you didn't weave in, and that weaves the tail in on the inside of the body and completes the body. Alright, so next up we need to add the white detail here along the eye. So I've got some white yarn threaded through the eye of my tapestry needle, and I'm going to send it into the body in between some stitches here underneath one of the eyes. So try not to grab any of the fabric, kind of send it down in between those stitches, and then we're going to come up directly center underneath that eye, sort of in the space between round 11 and round 12. And then we're going to leave this tail here on the outside of our work because we're going to come back to it and use it to secure these stitches that we're going to sew. Then to make this detail, we're going to take the white yarn and run it along the outer side of the eye. So I'm going to sew kind of centered on this side of the eye, and I'm going to sew straight across and grab the eye on the other side. And then this stitch here is going to run along the outer bottom of the eye, which adds that white detail. I will repeat that stitch here on this side, starting at the corner and sewing down underneath. And I'm going to bring my yarn needle up and in between the spaces where I went down, next to the tail that I left behind for myself. So we can pull this stitch, which adds that little white detail next to the eye. Then we can unthread our needle and we'll tie these two tails together in a square knot, sort of like how you tie your shoe. And I like to tie a double square knot just to make sure it's extra secure. And then holding those two tails together, we'll give them a trim pretty short. And you can discard anything you didn't need to sew with. And then to hide that knot on the inside of our work, we'll take the back end of our tapestry needle here and grab one of the stitches right next to where we went in. So I'm kind of slipping underneath here. And by pulling our work up and pushing, we can hide that knot on the inside of the body. So that is the white detail. Next, we need to add the eyebrow. So we're going to use a little bit of black thread this time. All right, so I have my black thread, and just like we did with the eye, we're going to go in between the spaces of some of the stitches here. And then I'm going to come up into round 12 and maybe about 4 stitches above one of the eyes. And then leave a little tail on the outside for yourself to tie with. And we'll sew a diagonal stitch down and into the space between round 13 and 14 here. And then across the way into round 12, about 4 stitches above the other eye. You can see that adds the eyebrow. I'll do the same thing on this side. And then I'm going to send my tail up into the space between stitches that I went down through. So there's the eyebrow on the other side. And I can unthread. Then I'm going to tie these two tails together. Trim them fairly short. And discard anything I didn't need to sew with. Then just like before, we'll take our needle and then pull that stitch up next door and then push the knot to the inside. And that is the eye and eyebrow detail added on. Alright, so next up are the tail fins. We need to make two, so let's make the first together and then you'll need to come back and make the second yourself. We're going to be using the same lilac color that we used on the body, and we're going to begin by forming another magic ring. Alright, so now that we have that magic ring formed, we're ready for round one, where we're going to put 4 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Alright, now that we have all 4 single crochet stitches, we can pull the tail and close off round 1. And we're ready for round 2, where we have a parentheses pattern to repeat, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. Followed by an increase. And we'll repeat that a second time. Alright, that's round 2 done. Round 3, we need to repeat that same pattern again, but we're going to repeat it 3 times this time. So 1 single crochet stitch, followed by 1 increase, Alright, that's round 3. Rounds 4 and 5, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. So here's round 4. And here's round 5. Alright, and I'm ready for round 6, which is my last round. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then a decrease, and repeat that 2 more times. Alright, and that wraps up the tail fin, so we're going to slip stitch into that stitch the stitch marker was just in, and then cut a tail to sew with. And then draw that last slip stitch long until the tail passes through and tighten down. I'm also going to trim the tail from my magic ring. And then we're going to take the tail we've just cut and use it to sew through those front loops like we did on the body as well. So I'll pass through all 6 of these front loops here from that last round that we crocheted. And then pull tight. And that wraps up one of the tail fins. So let's make one more and then get them attached to the body. Alright, so I have both tail fins made here, and I'm ready to attach them onto the body. So they're going to attach so that they create sort of this forked shape here at the back side of the body onto the very end that we crocheted. So I'm going to go ahead and double check that I've got this lined up correctly. They kind of sit alongside where the eyes are going to be. And then I'll take the tail from one of those tail fins and I'm just going to attach it by sewing through both layers of the fabric here. And then sewing onto the back of the body. Alright, so once you have that attached completely, we can tie another surface knot. So again, we'll make a loop on the surface of our work. Sew through some of the fabric and up through that loop. And then weave the tail in. Right, that is one of the tail fins attached. So we need to repeat with the other tail fin here on the other side. Alright, so next up is the belly section, and we're going to be using this white colored yarn. And we need to begin by forming a slip knot and getting some stitches chained. So let's review how to get a slip knot formed and how to chain our first few stitches. Alright, so let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain stitch. So we're going to take our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration, so just double check you're using the correct color from your pattern. And we're going to reserve ourselves a little bit of a tail, just like we do with our magic ring. So I'm going to take maybe 5 or 6 inches or so of my working yarn here, make myself a little tail, and then we're going to take that tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn. So we're sort of making like a lowercase letter B. So once we've got that wrapped around, we formed this loop here. We're going to kind of sandwich the working yarn with the tail. So bring it back around and kind of cross it over that loop. Sort of like a pretzel twist. Then when we've done that, what we need to do is draw this twist that we've just done, that strand, through this loop without pulling the tail all the way through, because that would just tie a knot. So I take my hook hand, which is my right hand, and I grab what I've laid over that loop and pull it. And then with my other hand, I grab my working yarn and then pull the loop through. And the reason I form my slip knots this way is because they tighten when you pull on the tail, but not when you pull on the working yarn. It won't tighten while you're trying to add stitches to it. So once you've got that slip knot formed, you're going to take your hook and slip it inside of the slip knot, and then pull the tail to tighten it into a loop down onto your hook. Then you're ready to begin tensioning by laying the working yarn over your yarn index finger. So for me, that's my left index finger. And then wrapping the rest of your fingers around our working yarn. And then I like to hold on to the slip knot itself with my middle and thumb on my yarn hand. And then we're ready to form a chain. So to chain, we'll take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw the working yarn through the slip knot we tied, and then pull up to form a nice tall loop. So that's our first chain. To continue chaining, we're going to just keep yarning over and drawing a nice tall loop through each time. One final thing though, the loop on your hook, as I'm sure I may have mentioned in the video before, that doesn't count as a stitch. This is sort of like a stitch in progress. So right now I have 2 chain stitches formed. I'll yarn over and draw another stitch through. That'll be 3, 4. And as you add chain stitches, I tend to move my middle and my thumb up closer to my hook to help me sort of tension my yarn a little easier. So as I chain, I just keep shifting my hand down the stitches that I've just created. Alright, so that's how you tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we know how to form a slip knot, we're ready to go ahead and begin round 1, where we're going to chain 7 stitches. Alright, now that we have all 7 of those stitches chained, we're ready to go ahead and begin working in the second chain from our hook. So we don't count the loop on our crochet hook. So 1, 2, and in that second chain, we're going to add 1 increase. And we're going to want to mark that first single crochet of the increase. Alright, and then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 chain stitches. So there's my first. Alright, there are all 4 of those single crochet stitches. Then I'm going to place 3 single crochet stitches in this last chain, which is the slip knot that we tied. There are those 3 single crochet stitches, and that's going to kind of help us flip around and work up the other side of this chain. I also like to pull my slip knot tail tightly and weave that in as I keep working. Alright, so working down the other side of this chain, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the 5 stitches of the chain. So I'm going to go through my next chain stitch and then lay my tail over my hook to work it in. Then I'll yarn over, drop a loop, and I'll keep adding 1 single crochet stitch. Alright, so there are those 5 single crochet stitches back up the chain, and you can see that takes me to my stitch marker. So we're going to place a slip stitch in that first stitch of the round, and then chain 1 stitch. And that sets us up for round 2. So round 2, we're going to put an increase in the first 2 stitches of the round. So here's my first. I'm going to mark that as well. So there's my first increase. Here's my second increase. Then we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches. Then we're going to place 1 increase in the next 3 stitches. So here's my first increase. Alright, there are those 3 increases. Then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. Followed by 1 increase. And then we are ready to slip stitch to finish this round. So we're going to slip stitch to that chain 1 that we made last round. So you can see that chain 1's right here next to my stitch marker. So I'm going to slip stitch into that chain 1. And then chain 1. And I'm ready for round 3. So I'll take my stitch marker out. Then I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round and mark that stitch, followed by 1 increase. And that's 1 repetition of that pattern. I'm going to keep repeating that 9 more times for a total of 10 repetitions. So 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, alright, so there's my last repetition there on that pattern. Then I'm going to slip stitch to that chain 1 from last round. And then chain 1. And I'm ready for round 4, where I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. So there are those first 4 single crochet stitches, followed by an increase. Then I'm going to repeat that pattern another 5 times for a total of 6 repetitions. Alright, there is my last repetition of that pattern, and I'm ready to slip stitch to that chain 1 from the last round. And then chain 1. And I'm ready for round 5, which is the last round. I'm just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so there's my last single crochet stitch. I'm ready to go ahead and slip stitch here to that chain 1 from the beginning of last round. And then we don't need to chain 1 because we are ready to fasten off. So we're going to go ahead and take our stitch marker out. And then we need to cut a long tail to sew with. So I'll reserve myself probably 20 inches of this tail. And then I'm going to pull that last slip stitch until the tail I cut passes through as well. And then tighten down. I can also trim the slip knot tail here on the back side of our work. And then we are ready to go ahead and get the belly patch attached onto our body here. And the belly patch is going to go on the bottom side of the belly towards the back side of the body. And the way we'll attach it is by using this tail. We'll thread it through the eye of our tapestry needle, and then we're going to sew it to the body by grabbing some of the fabric of the body and then sewing up through one of these stitches from that last round we crocheted. And we're just going to work our way around, grabbing one of the stitches from the body and one of the stitches from that last round until we've sewn the belly on all the way around. Alright, so I've sewn all the way around the belly and I'm ready to go ahead and tie a surface knot and weave this tail in. Alright, and that tail is woven in, so that wraps up the belly. Alright, so next up are the fins. I'll show you how to make the first, and then you'll need to make a second, and then we can come together and sew them onto the body. So we're going to begin with this lilac colored yarn again, and by forming a magic ring. Alright, so now that we have that magic ring formed, we're ready for round 1, where we're going to place 6 single crochet stitches inside. Once you've got all 6 of your single crochet stitches placed, you can pull the tail to close off round 1, and we're ready for round 2, where we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. we'll place one increase. And we'll repeat that pattern 2 more times. Alright, that's round 2 done. Rounds 3 and 4, we're going to put one single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, round 4 is done for me, and I'm ready for round 5, which is the last round of the fin. We're going to put one single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round, and then one decrease. And we'll repeat that 2 more times. And that wraps up round 5 and the fin, so we're ready to fasten off. We can take our stitch marker out, and we'll slip stitch in the stitch it was just in. And then we need to cut a long tail to sew with. Reserve yourself about 12 inches or so. Then we'll take that slip stitch that we just made and pull until the tail we cut passes through, and then pull down on the tail to tighten the slip stitch. I'm also going to cut the magic ring tail here. And that is one of the fins done. Let's make one more and then get them attached to the body. Alright, I have both of my fins crocheted and I'm ready to get them attached. So I'm going to take the tail from one of the fins and thread it through the eye of my tapestry needle. Then we're going to flatten the fin by pushing both sides of the fin together. I like to make sure that the tail that I'm sewing with is coming out of the corner of the fin. And then the fins are going to attach behind the eye and above the belly patch. And we'll sew through both layers of fabric of the fin. So grab some of the fabric of the body and then sew through both layers of fabric of the fin. And we'll continue sewing all the way across until the fin is completely attached. Alright, so the fin is attached here on my whale and I can weave my tail in. So I'm going to make sure the tail is coming out of the body and not out of the fin. And then I'm going to tie my surface knot. And then weave that tail into the body. Unthread my tapestry needle and trim. So there is one of the fins attached on this side of the body. We need to repeat with the second fin on this side of the body. Alright, so I have both of the fins attached to the body and I'm ready for the last part that we need to crochet, which is the horn. So we're going to begin with this turquoise colored yarn, and we need to start by forming a magic ring. Alright, once you have your magic ring formed, ready for round 1, where we're going to place 4 single crochet stitches inside of this magic ring. Alright, when you have all 4 of your single crochet stitches inside of your magic ring, you can pull the tail to close off round 1, and we're going to slip stitch to that first stitch of the round to join the round. And then chain 1 stitch. Alright, so we are ready for round 2, so I've chained 1. So round 2, we're going to be working in the back loop only, and we need to make 1 increase in each back loop all the way around. So when we've been sewing closed sections, you've been sewing through the front loop. I'm going to grab my yarn needle so you can see. We've been sewing through just this loop here, the one closest to the front of our work. When we crochet this time around, we're going to be working in this loop here, the one closest to the inside of the horn. So we'll take our crochet hook and we're going to snag just that back loop. and make a single crochet stitch inside the back loop, and then mark that. But we need to increase, so we're going to make a second single crochet stitch in that first back loop. So there's that first single crochet increase in the first back loop. We'll move on to the next stitch. Make another increase in just the back loop. Here's my third increase in the back loop, and my last. And then we need to slip stitch to that chain 1 that we made. So I'll go through that chain 1 and slip stitch. And then chain 1 to start my third round. So third round, we're going to be again in the back loops only, and we're going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in each back loop all the way around. So I'll mark this first stitch and keep adding 1 single crochet stitch to these back loops. Alright, so here's my last back loop only single crochet stitch. And then we are ready to slip stitch, but we're changing colors. So we need to change colors and pull through this slip stitch in our new color. So to do our color change, first I'm going to cut the magic ring tail short so we don't get it confused. Then I'm also going to cut the turquoise yarn. So leave yourself a little bit of a tail to work in, so maybe 4 inches or so. And then we're switching to this vanilla sort of yellowy color. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that yellow. And then when I make a color change, I like to make a little loop out of that color. So you can see, sort of just pinch the tail and the working yarn together to form this loop. So that loop is going to be what we pull through when we make our slip stitch. So I'll go ahead and push my hook through that chain 1 from last round, and then I'm going to make that little loop out of yellow and hook it onto my hook, and then pull that through the chain 1, and then pull that loop through the loop on my crochet hook. Then I'm going to take the yellow vanilla tail and hold it with the turquoise tail here inside of my work, and then begin tensioning the yellow so that I can make my chain 1. So there's our color change. We also need to work these tails in for the next few stitches of round 4. So let's take our stitch marker out, and I'm ready for round 4. So I'm going to be working these tails in for the first few stitches of round 4. So I'll go through my next stitch, lay those tails over my crochet hook, and then yarn under and draw through the stitch, yarn over and finish my single crochet stitch and mark. Go through my next stitch, lay those tails over my crochet hook, and make my single crochet stitch as normal. And I'll work those tails in for one more stitch. Right, so there are those tails worked in. I can trim them short. I'm not going to trim them all the way off, just short, and then I'm going to tuck what is left of them to the inside of the horn. Then I'm going to continue adding single crochet stitches here for round 4. Alright, so there is my last single crochet stitch. I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch to this chain 1 that we made when we made our color change. And then chain 1. And I'm ready for round 5, where again I'm just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so there's my last single crochet stitch. And I'm ready to move on to round 6, but we're moving on to a new color as well. So let's go ahead and insert our hook into that chain 1 as if we're going to slip stitch. And then we'll cut our yellow vanilla colored yarn and switch to tangerine. So we'll make a little loop out of that new color. And then we're going to pull through and slip stitch in this new color. Then we'll lay the tails from those 2 colors together in the back. And we're ready for round 6. Oh, we need to slip chain 1. And then we're going to chain 1. And then we're ready for round 6. So we need to work these tails in for the first few stitches of round 6. So we'll go through that first single crochet stitch, lay the vanilla and the tangerine tail over our crochet hook, and then make our single crochet stitch as normal, and mark. And let's work those tails in for another 2 stitches. Alright, so there are those tails worked in. I'll go ahead and give them a trim. And then tuck any remaining inside of the horn. And then continue adding single crochet stitches for round 6. Alright, I'm ready to slip stitch to that chain 1. And then chain 1. And round 7, which is the last round of the horn, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so I'm ready to fasten off. I'll take my stitch marker out, and I'm going to slip stitch to the chain 1 that I made to begin that round. And then we need to cut a tail to sew with. I'll reserve myself about 12 inches or so. And then pull that last slip stitch through. And then let's add a little stuffing to the inside of the horn as well. Alright, so that is the horn stuffed. So we're ready to go ahead and attach it on. So it's going to go here at the front, and it can either go straight up like so, or angled more in the front of the body like a horn. I'm going to have mine be a little more angled here towards the front. So I'll go ahead and thread my tapestry needle with the tail left over from the horn, and we'll attach the horn, being sure it's sort of centered between the eyes. And then to attach, we'll sew through some of the fabric of the body and then up through one of the last round's single crochet stitches. And we'll just sew all the way around, attaching the horn to the body. Alright, so I have sewn the horn on all the way around, and I'm ready to go ahead and fasten off. So first, make sure your tail's coming out of that tangerine colored stripe here at the bottom of the horn. And we're going to form our surface knot on that stripe. So I'll make a little loop and then sew up through to tie a knot, and then weave the tail into that tangerine stripe and then out through the body. And then trim. And with the horn attached, that concludes this tutorial.